Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts. Thank you so much for being here. Our last session of 2025. We did it. We're almost done. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Austin Regenball. I'm the Vice President of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this session since Michelle, I think, pitched it to me, and Avonte. You guys both pitched the same session like 5 months ago. So we're here and we're gonna rock it. But first, I want to go around the room. I want everyone to introduce themselves, say who you are and where you work. I'll start with you right there.
I'm Mandy and I work at Apple. I'm Rena and I'm also at Apple.
Aaron Breich, I work at the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments.
Lacey Mansus, also.
Kim Swindike, I'm on full-star technical service.
Mike Keatsy, Cascade Natural Gas, and member of the City Regional Chamber Board.
I'm Mike, Tri-City Union Gospel Mission. I am Aaron, also with the Tri-City Union Gospel Mission.
Naomi with Avonte. I'm Lindsay Betts with Avonte. Amy Bowman with Porter Kenny.
Lisa Mundy, Apple Valley News Now.
Merrill Monte, ITA. Eric Mendoza, moved here in Tri-City.
Charlie Grader with STCU. And I'm Lauren Welsh, STCU.
Troy Russell Party with the Richmond Public Library.
Awesome. Thank you so much all for being here. If you are on Zoom, please introduce yourself in the comments. We love having you as well. We're gonna bring you into the conversation as we get further and further in. So a reminder, we need to get a bowl back there for some business cards. Christina, could you go and get one? We have a great couple of giveaways at the end of today's session. So we will go around to make sure everybody can put their business cards in the bowl. This is our final session with our longtime sponsor, STCU. And we are so, so, so grateful for their many years of support. It's true that we say at the end of every Ask the Experts, this would not be possible to do for free without their support. And that is 100% true. This is a program that we have offered every month for, I think, 4 or 5 years with STCU's support. And because of them, we're all here and we're all learning together every single month. So I want to give them a real big round of applause. Thank you. Also, I want to introduce Charlie Grader. He is here from STCU and he's going to say a couple of words. One last time for Charlie.
Thank you, Austin. And so we've, long time sponsorship. We've been really, really proud to be a part of the Ask the Expert series. Something super cool that the Chamber puts on. So we're just thankful that we've been able to be a part of that. So very excited for today's topic, leading with empathy, something that hopefully I'm going to walk out of here learning some things and know more about it than I do now. So just want to say thank you, audience members, for your participation today. Thank you again to the Chamber for hosting this series, and most importantly, thank you to our panel for sharing your time and expertise with us. So happy holidays all, and thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay. Now to the fun part. Let's introduce our experts. First, alphabetical order. I'm not playing favorites today. Dolores Broeske serves as Chief People Officer at Harborstone Credit Union, leading organizational strategy for people, culture, and talent. With over 27 years of leadership experience in the credit union movement, she has held diverse roles, including operations, strategic management, human resources, and executive leadership, previously serving as president and CEO. Dolores is a dedicated champion for cultivating workspace cultures rooted in belonging, innovation, and service excellence, spearheading initiatives in leadership development, DEIB, advocacy, and talent strategy. She is recognized as one of American Banker's top 25 most powerful women in credit unions and is the recipient of the 2023 Athena Leadership Award. She's a resilient leader and passionate advocate, Dolores Broeske, everybody. Let's give her a thank you. Michelle Holt. You're next, Michelle. She has led the Benton-Franklin Council of Governments as executive director since February 2021. With nearly 30 years of executive leadership, Michelle specializes in organizational revitalization and community, economic, and workforce development. She shares her expertise through keynote addresses and workshops under Holt Consulting. Her extensive background includes serving as Executive Director of Workforce Training and Community Education for the College of Eastern Idaho, CEO for the Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce, and President of Junior Achievement of Idaho. Michelle, married for 35 years with 3 daughters and 4 grandchildren, enjoys reading and natural disaster movies. This is Michelle Holt. And last but definitely not least, Avonte Jackson. She brings over 25 years of nonprofit leadership driven by a passion for community service discovered during her time as a stay-at-home mom. After starting her career in a Fortune 50 company, holy cow, Avonte earned a master's in business administration, equipping her to lead Grace Clinic, the Tri-Cities' only free clinic since 2015. She also serves as treasurer for the National Association of Free and Charitable Clinics. A past Athena Leadership Award honoree. It's true, we got 2 at this table. Avonte finds relaxation in yoga, audiobooks, and episodes of Shark Tank. Me too, I love Shark Tank. She lives by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, everyone can be great because everyone can serve. This is Avonte Jackson. Take it away.
Oh, Albert stood up. I'm not supposed to stand. I committed to Austin that I would stay seated, so we'll see how well that goes today. I'm really excited to be here to talk about this great topic of leading with empathy. What I find when I have to do presentations like this, I'm always the student that has to learn the most. And so I've had lots of experiences recently that have helped me to embrace this topic. And the other thing that I have found too is working with these ladies, I feel like my part of this as the leadoff batter is to set the table. So since we're in the holiday season, we just had Thanksgiving, we've got Christmas and New Year's and all these other holidays coming up. You know, there's a spread, right? So my job is to set the table and then we're gonna feast on this topic today. So the first thing I wanna do is we're gonna go. So we're gonna do a little audience participation. So when you think of the word empathy, what things come to mind? So we just kind of throw it out there popcorn style. What comes to mind when you think of empathy?
You're able to feel other people's feelings.
Thank you.
Kindness,
Thanks.
understanding,
What was that?
listening,
Listening.
Compassion for others. Someone on Zoom?
Okay, great. Any other thoughts? So we just added all those things to our table that we're setting today. And so we're gonna build on that. So Michelle here recently posted some awesome stuff on LinkedIn. She's been doing different posts. And one of them was on empathy. And I was like, oh, Michelle, I'm gonna use your stuff. And so and she empathetically said that would be fine. So here's a definition of empathy. Modeling care and curiosity while encouraging teammates to understand each other's lived experiences. I really love this definition because it brought in the element that I hadn't thought of, which is the curiosity. That part really is important. So she went on to say in her post, empathy too often is reduced to just being nice or listening more, but in reality, it starts with something simpler, which is curiosity. And I love this more than anything. I read a book several years ago. It was written by a journalist from Seattle. Her name is Monica Guzman. And the book is called I Never Thought of It That Way. I wish I had the subtitle of it, but I can't remember, but it's something about curious conversations in a dangerously divided time. The backstory of this particular book is that Monica and her parents have vastly different political viewpoints. She's on one end and they're on the other. And her friends were encouraging her to distance herself from her parents because of their viewpoint. And she thinks they're crazy. She's like, I'm not distancing myself from my parents because I love them and I want to maintain a relationship with them. So this book is all about building these conversations with people based on curiosity, letting your curiosity about why do you think the way that you do? Why do you act the way that you do? Why have you chosen this path? But letting that curiosity drive a conversation that bridges the gap between them. And I think that this definition plays right into that. It is how do we use curiosity to build? One of the things we run into at Grace Clinic, where I'm the executive director at Grace Clinic, as Austin mentioned. And as a free clinic, and at any clinic, one of the problems that we manage is no-shows. So when someone doesn't show up for an appointment, there is frustration that comes with that. But maybe there should also be some curiosity. Well, why didn't that person make it to the clinic? Especially in our case where we're dealing with underserved populations, transportation issue, work conflict, children. What are the other elements that could have contributed to that? So curiosity is one of the things I want you to really hold on to as we are going through this conversation. The other thing we want to do is distance ourselves from sympathy and any correlation that might have with empathy in this context. So sympathy is really much more about pity than it is. Empathy doesn't really involve that. It's not about pitying people. I thought about this. I'll have lots of pop culture references because I read a lot of books and podcasts and songs. So there's no telling what I'm going to tell you right now. There's a movie called The Impossible. If anyone remembers this movie, it was about the tsunami in Thailand. So when I heard about the actual tsunami, I felt a great deal of sympathy for those people. But I have no concept of what it's like to run from your life from a wall of water. I really don't understand that. And sympathy kind of sometimes can have that element to it where you don't really know what people are going through specifically. Sometimes you do, but a lot of times we just feel bad about it, but we don't really have a direct experience of it. Empathy is really more about us entering in so that we have a deeper understanding and can relate to it. So we're thinking about how to perceive and relate to their thoughts, to their experiences. And it's really diving in as opposed to having a distance to it. We want to really start to do that more. Another book I read that I want to share with you. This one is called How to Work with Complicated People. I really, really, really love this book. So I want you to just think about something again, a little bit of audience sharing. So I want you to think about top performers or really skilled people that you work with. How do you treat them? How do you feel about those folks that are really kind of the top of their game?
Respectful.
Respect.
Admiration.
Admiration. Okay. Anything else?
Inspiration.
Inspiration. Yeah. Okay. So now let's flip that. Let's think about the people that we really struggle with. How do we treat them, see them?
Annoying.
It's annoying. Okay.
An obstacle.
Obstacle. Yes. Yeah. So there were a lot of things I took out of this book. So I will tell you the main thing I took out of it, which I didn't appreciate the author getting in my business like this, but what he said is often the most complicated person that we're dealing with is ourselves. Which, speak for yourself, author Brian Lee, but I am probably pretty complicated to work with when I think about it. But one of the things he said is how you see them is how you treat them. So empathy is really about breaking out of that cycle and thinking about the complicated or difficult or challenging situations and then kind of sidelining that person. There's almost a judgment that goes along with that, which we want to avoid. So again, it's how can we shift how we see people? Another pop culture reference for you, movie Avatar. When they were in love with each other, they didn't say, I love you. They said, I see you. And empathy is really how do we see people? So we'll tuck that in. As always, anything that we put into practice is going to help us to grow as leaders. And so this is an opportunity for us to grow in our emotional intelligence and also our effectiveness as leaders. So incorporating this empathetic approach is going to help us to grow. So while we are really working with our teams and there's going to be benefit with the people that we work with, there's always going to be that benefit that we gain as well. And there's going to be a lot of great stuff about that later on in the presentation because I've had a preview and you're going to love it. All right. So the pillars that we're going to build on today as we're setting our table, as we want to think about curiosity, which is that genuine interest in understanding others' perspective. We talked about listening. And the listening is not just the active listening that we learn, but it is also really learning to listen without judgment We want to try to get ourselves to a point where we're discerning and we're understanding and we're perceiving, but we're not necessarily making a judgment against someone as we are listening to those conversations. Understanding, I almost put it, look, have you ever seen those things, those little puzzles where it says understand, you know, the I is under the stand, you know, I understanding, anyway. I thought about that, and because understanding really is I feel like it's an opportunity to really give support to someone. Because we're gonna stand under what and understand better what they're going through. And then let all of that drive our actions. And if I could revise this slide just a little bit, I would not only have action, but accountability as part of it. Because empathy does not mean that we are no longer holding people accountable. It does not mean that at all. That is still an important element of it. But we also want to incorporate support and compassion into the way that we respond to those circumstances. I had a boss, I will tell you, my very first boss at that Fortune 50 company that I worked for. I am still today practicing things that she taught me because she took the time to understand me and understood what I needed. And so I am still to this day using the principles and ideas that she taught. And we have the opportunity then as leaders to have that long lasting effect on the people that we work with as well. Of course, we need some payoff from this, right? We all businesses, whether we're nonprofit or for-profit, we want this to pay off in real ways. There's reduced turnover and less those costs that go along with it. How disruptive is it when your team is churning constantly, right? So we want to reduce our turnover, but at the same time, we want to increase our retention. So those are kind of two sides of the same coin. That leads to greater productivity. When people feel that they are understood and that they are being supported, they can better navigate their work demands as well, because we are putting in place those structures and supports that are going to help them to work a little bit more effectively. And it really does promote job fulfillment and satisfaction as well. And here I think about Amazon. You know how Amazon, what the reason so many people are just pushing that add to cart and ship now, because they have removed the friction. That is their claim to fame, removing the friction from the process. And so through empathy, we have the same opportunity with our teams, is to remove friction so that it's just sort of just oiling down that whole process for them and making things a little bit easier for them and for us. All right, anybody that knows me knows I got to bring a sports reference in. We talk sports, well, we talk movies and books, so let's talk sports. This is one of my favorite coaches in the NFL. Anybody know who that is?
Oh, yeah.
Mike Tomlin. And he has been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for, I don't know, 15 years, 17 years, something like that. Well, okay, there are some people who don't want him to be the coach any longer. You know, just full disclaimer, I think he's great, but I'm not in Pittsburgh. So anyway, he had a situation with a player several years ago. And the player wanted out, and he said in his press conference, "We want volunteers and not hostages." And his whole approach, if people want to go, he doesn't want them to stick around, because all those things we talked about, the productivity and the job fulfillment, job satisfaction goes to pot when you have someone who feels like they are handcuffed and tied. So what we really want to do is create an environment where our people want to be with us, that they don't feel tied to it, they don't feel handcuffed. Now, this is especially true at Grace Clinic. We have about 300 volunteers that serve with us every year. And it's a 20-to-1 ratio of volunteers to staff. Our staff is much smaller than our unpaid workforce. So how do we create an environment where people want to come and work for free? One of the things we work hard to do is to create a culture that makes people want to be there. And empathy is part of that. Empathy is part of how we create an environment where every morning, every afternoon, we have a different shift of people. Every day of the week, it's a different crew of people. We don't have the same people working every day of the week. It changes. We have a consistent staff and then lots of volunteers who are rotating in and out. We call it Jenga. It's like you move this piece here and you move this piece there and hope the tower doesn't collapse. That is how we function. And the way we try to build that and make this a meaningful experience for people is by building empathy into the culture and everything that we do. It's a big part of it. So I take this from Mike Tomlin very seriously. Now, some of our volunteers are kind of like hostages because they're students and they have to be there. But we still want this to be a meaningful experience for them. And so we still work very hard to make sure that it is one of the best experiences that they've had. And that is our. All right, so as we now go into the next part of the presentation, my challenge to you is to think about someone that you would view as more complicated or complex to work with. And kind of keep that person in mind as we're going through this discussion and hearing the other, both what Dolores and Michelle are going to share, so that you kind of have a real life situation and then challenge yourself to set up a meeting with them. I said this week, but maybe, between now and the end of the year, can you set up a one-on-one with them where you can practice that curiosity and those active listening skills? You know why? Because the holidays are coming, and if you don't do it now, by January, you're going to be like, what did they say? Okay, so the goal is to put these into practice as much as you can. And then last thing I think I'll close with for my section is, in our house, we have a phrase, especially my daughter now. If someone says, how you doing? And you say, I'm fine. We reject the word fine. And it's an acronym for feelings inside, not expressed. So when you're meeting with people, we're not looking for the response fine. We're looking for a deeper connection. We're looking for something much more substantive than that, and really building that connection with people through empathetic leadership. All right. So with that, I will pass the mic, so to speak, to Dolores, and she'll take over from here.
And I'm fine, thank you. Okay, so I get to look at empathy through the wide lens, and why do you incorporate it in through the lens of running your business? Avonte just set us up really perfectly on the what is empathy, and I think the words that came out were perfect. It's really neat to see that when you see it in your presentation come through. So I think we're spot on in how we define empathy. So I get to go to the next step. So why leading with empathy isn't just the right thing to do, but it's actually strategic through a business lens. So when empathy is authentic, it becomes a powerful culture driver. And when I say culture and empathy, I'm kind of I'm switching the words together. So culture is empathy to me. It's a big driver of how we run our business. So it's a driver of culture, performance, and organizational success. It shapes how we lead, how we integrate our teams, how we navigate change, and ultimately how we deliver on our mission, which is something that I hope that I can paint the picture on as we go through this. So let's be honest, when you think about empathy and you really think about it in the workplace as something intentional or strategic, can it still be authentic and real? You think about that. Empathy isn't just a behavior, a one-time notation of how you're feeling in the moment, but we want to turn it into what it feels more. It's not just about convenience, let's put it that way. It's the act of leaning in, it's seeking to understand, as Avonte said, it's caring enough to listen to others and investing in others so that they can succeed. A culture built on empathy is a business strategy, as I said earlier, and it's very powerful. It's not just a soft concept. I had to really grasp this through my years in leadership, and I really started to embrace leading with love is not weakness. When I say love, leading with empathy is not weak. It's not soft. It's actually incredibly, incredibly strong to do that. It's a strategic capability and incredibly smart way to lead your business. When something's both the right thing to do and it's effective in the things that you do, then your teams will rally behind it. They will get behind you. They will bring life to it every single day. So when leaders and organizations truly understand what empathy is, it becomes transformational within your organization. And I'm going to give some examples here in a few minutes, but it shapes your culture. It improves performance. It strengthens employees and member relationships or your customer relationships. And it influences business outcomes that are measurable and also meaningful in ways to measure. Empathy is the common thread that should be woven through all of our organizations, through all of our aspects of our business. It should be in our business. It should be in our boardrooms. It should be on our front line. It should be in our break rooms if it's a real authentic culture. So I would say empathy, when it's authentic and human every single day, it's timeless and it's something that you can apply no matter what your strategy is that year, whatever you're focusing on that year. Empathy is a common thread that can be ever so woven through the fabric of your organization. So when people ask me the kind of business that I'm in, I don't say financial services. And I notice there's quite a few credit unions in the room, which is really neat to see. But I always say that I'm in the people money business. So credit unions hold a really unique position when it comes to the financial ecosystem. We are not nonprofit, but we are not for profit. So there's a difference. And the not for profit piece just means that we have to generate revenue to stay relevant. We have to generate revenue to enrich our, but not for the sake of enriching shareholders. We give our earnings and we reinvest them back into our membership. We invest them back into our communities, into our businesses, into our people, both internal people and again, the communities in which we serve. But we have to balance fiscal responsibility with purpose. That's a really important thing, which I think no matter what organization you're in, knowing your purpose is really important. So we have to be profitable to stay sustainable, but we never lose sight of our mission of people helping people. Sure, organizations all have a bottom line that you need to manage to or whatnot. And so credit unions at their very nature have a deep rooted legacy in people. So the nature of who we are, the people focus is a common thread. Which right now I get it's probably a spammer following me right now. So maybe I should answer it. I'm fine. So credit unions began, I just want to give a real quick history, but credit unions began in the 1850s in Germany, where a group of people came together in a community and saw a need for financial services for an underserved population. And today, this is how credit unions still operate. We're here to serve the underserved or the unbanked in our communities. And so it's still our compass of today. But I wanted to highlight at the end of the day, so we all know we have to run our businesses. At the very basis, we have business objectives. We need to offer the best products. We have to do the things to make our operations run efficiently. But when you can run your business, which is the basis, and also have culture and empathy within that organization, those two are a dynamic duo. And I think that's where we need to focus in on the people piece, is where many organizations miss the boat. You can say they are that way, but it's really are your words and your actions, just like as leaders, as people watch our behaviors, do we do what we say we're going to do? So your people run your business. They execute the vision, they carry your brand into every interaction. They are your brand in action in everything they do. So what sets us apart are our people, but you cannot commoditize, automate, or replicate your people. It just can't be done. So how many of you guys from each year to year go in and you do strategic planning? Whether it's third quarter of the year and you start thinking about the year ahead and what are you going to do for the next year. Usually you go in and you review your vision and your mission. Is it still relevant to what you're doing, trying to serve? You come up with goals and objectives. What's new next year? What goals are you going to set so you can infuse that into your organization and set performance drivers and try to think about what is there that are going to, what are the risks out there, the threats that are on the horizon that could get in the way of you being successful. We come up with action plans, our business plans, that's our operating plans. And then finally, we come up with a bunch of KPIs, and that's how we are known performance indicators. So what are we going to measure to make sure that we're on goal with that strategic plan that we just came up with? These are all business essentials. They are all, but dare I say, it's not enough to just have a business plan, to just have a strategy plan. Usually you plan for 3-5 years into the future, right? And then you're operating from year to year. But that in itself isn't enough. So now let me ask you, in your strategy plans, do you guys dedicate time and do you come up with a people strategy plan? I was on a panel one time and this question was asked of the people participating, what keeps you up at night? So if you think about that, if any one of you want to shout, what keeps you up at night as a leader or as a person that's in charge of your organization or in your business unit within the organization?
Meeting KPIs.
Meeting KPIs. Mhm. Anything else?
Budget issues.
Budget issues,
Staff satisfaction.
staff satisfaction, the economy, regulatory pressures. There's all of these things. But the most common thing in this panel that came up was people was always in there. Worrying about staff, worrying about having the right talent and how to hire that talent. So I guess my point in all of this is that you can have the best business strategy in the world. You can have the strongest financial roadmap. You can build the smartest goals, plans, and KPIs. But if you fail to align your people to your strategy is going to fail. People are the strategy. This is the piece that I really love. But people are your strategy. Culture is the execution plan. And empathy is your operating system. And if you operate your business through that lens, you will start to see a fundamental shift and change in your organization. So where I work at Harborstone, we're not just a financial institution. If you were to talk into the organization and interview people, they will tell you that we don't just do loans and open accounts and do balance transfers and all of these things, but we are community builders, we're mission carriers, and we are people first designed organization. And if you guys have never seen this book, Culture by Design, this has really been our playbook for how we've been shaping our culture in the last year and a half or so. It's by David Friedman. And it's a very, very good book. And I refer to it in here. A lot of the things that we've done the concept have come from this book. But when we put our people at the center, employees and members, we lead with purpose and we operate with empathy and we actually create lasting impact. We're not just meeting the bottom line or closing the books, but we actually made a meaningful difference. So the reality of people strategies, when we think about people as our true asset of our organizations, we talk a lot about, again, people, that's just it, they're our greatest asset. But the reality is many organizations stress the importance, but then they really have no true commitment to a comprehensive people strategy. And when I say people strategy, it's the what and how we do within our organization. I'm going to give you a few examples, but too often we say that our people matter, but then we don't invest in their growth and we don't invest in their well-being as a person inside and outside of work. To remember, I think Michelle's really going to hit on that point, is knowing your people. We also say that we talk about culture all the time, but yeah, we treat it as an afterthought instead of a strategic priority. Oh, do you have good culture in your organization? Oh yeah, we have good culture. Well, what does that mean? And if you don't infuse or breathe into the, and I'm not saying that the organization says this is what our culture is, because the culture is whatever the people are doing and living. And that your organization can take a mind of its own and a culture of its own. If you're not infusing that piece and the empathy piece, which is all those things that we talk about. Use of kind as part of that, which is something I'm really proud of at Harborstone. One of our core values is kind. And it just all encompasses, you can't argue with that, right? And also kind means accountability. It means, it does mean measuring and having KPIs and whatnot, because we have a responsibility to run our organization as well. So as we talked about successful people strategies that improve the bottom line, create healthier and more positive workplaces. I think when you create an organization like that, it is unstoppable. So empathy as part of Culture by Design is actually simple to implement. It doesn't have to be complicated and to be effective. So some practical ways that we've done it at Harborstone, some of it is so simple, you're going to go, well, of course. But I think when you intentionally do these things, that it just all of a sudden starts taking hold and it spreads like wildfire. So communicate with transparency. One thing that we have at Harborstone that I love is we are in the relentless pursuit to communicate. There should be nobody in our organization that doesn't know the why behind what we're doing. There isn't, we don't want anybody to walk in a room and feel anonymous and like they don't know what's happening or going on. So we use our internal channels like email, internet, town halls, our team huddles, but even just as important, more importantly, is in person. We actually talk to each other in person, which is exciting, right? In a hybrid work environment, which we do have as well, it's just really important to connect and to communicate. I said we share the why behind the what, but on Monday mornings, we start our week off with an email from me. That just infuses like the tone for the week for the organization. We call them, we have a PNW's name. Our headquarters, by the way, is in Lakewood. So our footprint is everywhere from southern Washington, Olympia, all the way up to Bellingham and into the San Juan Islands. But we start our day off with a weekly message. It sets the tone. It's from me. We call it Phil Notes by Mama D. And so we just set the tone for the week. And then Wednesdays, we get together as a whole organization at 8:40 every Wednesday. If you're scheduled to be at work, you're logging into this meeting. And it is really just, a lot of times it's a lighthearted. We actually started off with funny dad jokes. And we just like try to connect outside of just the busyness of our workload. Sometimes there are business updates, but a lot of time it's just that midweek check-in for everybody hands in. And that in itself has been amazing. We call that base camp. So we have a PNW kind of theme where we have mountain peaks that we, for that year's goals and whatnot. And so anyways, we do the field notes, the weekly base camp, and we have gotten so much feedback, even from a silly little 10 minutes together on a Wednesday, but it matters a lot. We make empathy a measurable behavior at our organization. So we add it to our performance expectations and the annual review process. That might sound like, how do you do that? But we have out of this book, there's a concept about having specific behaviors and essential, it's basically the 10, we call it our 10 essentials, but it's how we behave and how we treat each other. It's as simple as, when I see you in the hallway, I'm going to smile and say hello. I mean, that's really simple. We give people the benefit of the doubt. We lift others up in rooms that they aren't in. It's that kind of thing where it's just an expectation that if you walk into the walls of Harborstone, into the four walls, that you're going to feel a certain way because we actually behave consistently a certain way. We evaluate leadership on how they lead, not just the metrics that their unit produces. So we listen to our employee surveys on those units, and we give the feedback to our leadership, and we invest in our leaders through a program that I brought to the organization that we call Elevate Leadership Academy. And so it is all infused with empathy and culture, and it teaches our leaders how to run the business, but it also teaches our leaders about emotional intelligence and how you treat people and how you listen and how you lead well. And also highlighting that leadership and behaviors and how you treat others through a leadership lens is, you're never doing it in secret, right? Everybody watches every move, and so they see what you do and how you do it. We talked a lot about our behaviors, how we treat others, and also that leadership is probably one of the hardest things you'll do, but the most rewarding things. So we embed empathy also in our recognition systems. So we not only in the culture say this is how we do it and this is how we behave, but then we include it in our reviews and our expectations. And then we also highlight it when it happens, and we do it. So we do shout outs. We share real stories of kindness and support and impact that's going on in the organization. We find employees that are doing good and we shout it out to the rooftops, and we celebrate by quarterly, like annual awards as well, but it's all about, usually we wrap it back to how was I dependable, how was I committed, and how was I kind in my interactions. So culture at its bottom line isn't soft. Empathy is not soft, but it's actually a hard driver of results. And for sake of time, I'm just going to go down here and skip a little bit further, but the difference shows up in the numbers, the actual bottom line numbers. When you have an empathetic, true, authentic culture, it says that companies with highly engaged employees grew revenue by 2.5 times more than others. the companies that did not, I should say. Companies with a healthy culture saw a 233% increase in customer loyalty. This is really the true story, and I have another slide as I go through it, but we just acquired a bank up north, and we were out on boots on the ground talking to our people and talking to the customers. And we asked this gentleman when he came in the door, we were like, how are you feeling? Like, what do you think of this? You're a customer, and now, you know, Harborstone is here. And he said, I don't care what the name is on the outside of the building. All I really care about is are the people on the inside. Are you going to take care of the people? And I'm going to get to see the same faces. So it came down to, I'm still going to use my debit card. I'm still going to do the thing. I'm going to apply for the loans when I need them. But really, all I really care about is the people when I walk in the door. So it increases customer loyalty. And engaged employees, Avonte touched on this, are 87% less likely to leave. And also 89% of highly engaged employees say that they come from a culture of caring and authentic, a positive and caring environment. And the other one that I love is 88% of workers say that culture matters when they're choosing where they want to work. Sometimes more than perks, sometimes more than pay. They want to know what kind of organization are they going to be joining. So they're not just nice to haves, as you can say, but a productive, authentic, empathetic culture actually drives business outcomes. So call to action. Strategy, I guess it's really, if you think your people are your biggest asset, and I think all of you guys are in this room for a reason, but if you reflect on that and you have one behavior and one step at a time, you can start implementing things. You can just start with one commitment. What is the behavior that you would like to see within your organization that everybody is capable of doing? Think of one leadership behavior, the people that are leading your people, your most important asset. Like, what do you want them infusing into the culture and how they lead? And one new practice that shows that your people matter, and that maybe that's the shout outs. Maybe that's some of those practical ways that I said we're doing it. But you don't have to fix everything all at once. You should know that. But you do have to start if you're not already. I have a pretty good hunch most of you are doing many of these things, but I think if you just think, if you say I value my people, are you showing them that you value them? So this is a quick, I put Harborstone Credit Union case study. I told you, just merged a little credit union, and we also acquired a bank. And so we just lived empathy in strategy firsthand. We did both merger and acquisition within a 30-day period. One credit union came on September 1, the bank we acquired on October 1. So within a 30-day period, we had a 40% increase in our employees. We grew very fast, and it felt like it was almost overnight. So the stakes were high, as you can imagine. The scale of the change was enormous, and we could have taken the easy route, and we could have just said, we're going to take the transactional route, which would have been to onboard all of these people quickly, check the boxes, get their benefits in place, and then get back to business. But that's not who we are and how we operate. So instead, we went to treating our new employees from being a transaction to, we wanted to create an experience for them. We wanted to integrate them, and the experience that we created was laced with empathy. It started before our organizations were legally one. It started with how we communicated with them ahead of time, how we made visits, how we had newsletters, how we would surprise and delight, as we said, and show up without announcement with gifts, or I would say even with cookies. And just those little gestures went miles ahead. Like things that you don't think matter, the little things do. The little teeny things almost sometimes matter the most. So we acknowledged that change was hard to them. We didn't pretend it wasn't. We didn't paint a rosy picture like we're not going to have hiccups in the road. We told them the truth. We didn't push past the human impact. We led with care and communication and presence. We welcomed people into our culture, which I am really proud of. We just didn't welcome them into the organization. We also recognized what they were bringing to the culture, and we listened to their questions, their fears, and their hopes. Again, we honored their legacy that they brought with them, and we actually have interwoven bits and pieces of their legacy as organizations to, again, acknowledge who they were as an organization as they were becoming one with Harborstone. And here's what we really learned. That we learned when you lead with authentic empathy, that people feel it. It built trust with them. I mean, imagine, I know one day it felt like nothing was really changing, but everything was changing in their worlds. They're a new from their paycheck had a different name on it. To even though they were showing up at the same places every day, it still built trust with them. It built cohesion. It smoothed the rough edges of the transition. It turned our M&A from a disruption into an opportunity for belonging, for connection, and shared purpose. And I can tell you that we had another, this is pre me being there, but there was another merger that happened. And the thought wasn't put into that merger like it was these two. And I was told that the experience was night and day. The feedback was night and day. And it was definitely a difference maker. We actually have comments like, I wish we would have done this years ago. But we chose empathy. We could have done it the easy way, but we chose empathy. So we built a culture where people felt respected and valued from day one. And because of that, the integration wasn't just successful, but it was meaningful. And my last little bit, people make the difference in every business, especially ours and especially yours. When we lead with empathy, we create conditions where people feel safe and supported and confident. Michelle's going to go into that. And when people feel empowered, they do extraordinary things. They get behind who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and they will do it. And they will do things you don't ask them to do, and they will be lockstep in your brand. When I say they're our brand in action, they're representing you and me in every interaction. And so it's just, again, when they feel empowered, they will do extraordinary things. Empathy isn't just kindness, it's a catalyst for innovation and engagement and long-term success. I think for time, I don't want to run long on my stuff, so are we at time? Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. Oh, is he? I'm just keep going.
No, I'm fine. But we do need to get to Michelle because I wanted to have time for questions.
Yep, okay, we're gonna do this last slide. So in conclusion, the empathy should be woven in the fabric of your organization. Oh, we got it. It's not a moment, not a campaign, not a holiday message, but a way of working, a way of leading, and a way of treating one another. And it's your culture. So in the spirit of the holidays, just know it's just not the holiday spirit, but should be expressed, each day through your actions. So with that, I will turn it over. I didn't expect to go that long. So
You guys have been doing this for so I think it's awesome to actually be able to share some real examples of what that looks like. That's a good segue. So I really want to draw attention to Dolores' slide where she had the most wonderful time of the year. And I think I don't know about anybody else thinking about empathy and kind of getting in touch with how people feel, but there are an awful lot of people that this is not the most wonderful time of the year, or we're struggling to feel like it should be the most time or best time of the year. I know I am one of those. I'm in active denial that Christmas is a couple of weeks away. And, so I definitely feel that. So I'm Michelle, and I get to talk about the how. Some actual tools that you can employ to actively cultivate empathy as a leader, as a coworker in your workplace. So first up, when we talk about empathy at work, it's not necessarily big things. It's those little things. It's taking that extra 3 seconds to actually see people. Avonte talked about how do we see people and the perception and relating? And the first step is really just making sure that you're practicing your pause to see people. I have an activity for us, and before I switch to the next slide, what I want everybody to do, I want to invite you into a moment of awareness as we kind of wrap up our afternoon. And so I want everyone to close your eyes. And I'm going to read some statements for you. And if any of these statements have resonated for you in the last, let's say 6 months, I'd like you to raise your hand. Go ahead and keep your eyes closed. Raise your hand if in the last couple of months, any of these were true, the last 6 months, if you felt exhausted but pretended you were fine. If you've done your best, but your best didn't look like it used to. If you felt disconnected for your team, go ahead and leave your hands up. If you felt disconnected from your team or isolated at work. If you've navigated a health issue that's hard to talk about. If you've helped a colleague who was clearly overwhelmed. Or if you've shown up at work while carrying something heavy from your own life. I want you to keep your hands up, and everybody, I want you to open your eyes and take a look around the room. Right? The reality is that everyone in this room resonated with at least one of those feelings. We all have unforeseen things that weigh on us as individuals. And people are messy people in general. I mean, we're just complicated, complex creatures. But on top of that, we have things that are weighing on us all the time. And I like to call these the 4 undercurrents. And I call them the undercurrents because they work like an undertow. You don't necessarily see it, but it's drawing at the presence and the capability and capacity of people on your team all the time. And you may not really be aware that they're there. So we group them into 4 categories. The first is emotional and psychological overload. So this is just the everything bucket. You're stressed, grief, anxiety, finances, family stuff. You know, even the annoyance of the commute on the way in, you know, the things that just weigh on you psychologically. Okay? The second is relational disconnection. Our country is suffering from an epidemic of loneliness. We have more ways to connect with each other because of technology, and yet we are further and further apart from real human connection. And people feel it, and they're craving opportunities to be seen as people and to be understood as individuals. And more than just a like on a post, or, you know, they call it pebbling. I do this with my friends too, because we're all busy. We'll send a meme and we send a joke and whatever. And that's supposed to just let you know, hey, I'm thinking about you. But really, that's not quite the same as actually sitting down and seeing somebody and acknowledging where they are, right? So the third category is one that I'm gonna be honest, I've had more conversations with my own staff in relation to this category in the last 5 years than I've had in my entire career. And this group I call neurodiversity and cognitive variability. This is everything from just learning style differences to adult ADHD, sensory sensitivities, you name it. We as individuals are changing, and how we relate are changing. We have a level of awareness today of how we are impacted by how we think and how we do things than we've ever had before. So just in the last year, I've had conversations with employees about newly diagnosed ADHD and how they're trying to deal with that. I've had conversations about sensitivity to sound and light and disruption and how it impacts how people work. I have an adult daughter who has issues with executive function and auditory processing. And that changes how she needs to communicate information at work and what that looks like. I have a granddaughter who's nonverbal autistic. We're seeing more and more people in our community on somewhere on the spectrum. How do you relate in a workplace when maybe you don't function in the same way everybody else does, right? And then the fourth category is physical and hormonal factors, chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, women of a certain age. We're in the menopause, perimenopause phase. I've got employees who are struggling with things like chronic migraines, chronic asthma, insomnia, and we're having to not just make formal accommodations for people, but this is just everyday stuff. Like I don't have a doctor's diagnosis, but there's some things that we can do as employers and supervisors to help employees do better work and feel like we are coming alongside them as partners in our workplace. So I bring this to our attention because understanding these things and recognizing that they exist will change how you lead. They will change how you see and perceive the people in your workplace. So I've got some tools we're going to share for you. This is what I call the reality check. So I have a program. It's a framework called Get Real. And it talks about 7 different relational competencies to emphasize in the workplace in order to improve culture and performance of your team. And one element of that is the reality check. So the real in reality stands for recognize, engage, ask, and listen. You grabbed it on the way in. I've got a tool that you can take with you, so you can have that. But we're going to give some examples of how to apply the reality check in 3 different environments as you go about your work. Avonte specifically mentioned, again, how you see people is how you treat people. And so this first piece, that recognition, becomes hugely important. As leaders, the first is that empathy begins with you as the leader, and we're not expected to operate at emotional perfection because we are just like everybody else in our workplace. We have our own stuff too. We have days that we don't show up as our best selves. So it's really important to be aware of that so that doesn't leak into how we lead. So to use our reality check for you as a supervisor, the first thing we do is that recognize what emotional tone are you bringing to the office? Well, do an emotional scan. How are you feeling? What's going on for you? The second is to kind of engage with that. There's a counseling technique called name it to tame it. And this is kind of that idea, is that, engage with yourself. Can I acknowledge how I'm feeling so that I don't transfer it to somebody else? How do I engage with how I'm feeling? Ask yourself, what do I need to be present and grounded or fair today? Do you need a short break? Do you need a quick walk? Do you need a cup of tea or coffee? Do you need a few minutes of deep breathing? What do you need to get into a place where you can lead without just throwing up your own stuff on everybody? Which we've all been there. Pause, I'm going to say it. Sometimes there are times. And then lastly, listen and respond to that. What do I need to reset before I go out and meet everybody else? It takes 1 minute, but that 1 minute as a leader to show self-empathy elevates your ability to show up. So the second area we're going to talk about is meetings. And, empathy asks, whose voice, energy, or clarity do we need to make space for right now? So bringing empathy into meetings really starts with reading the emotional capacity of the room. Now, as the third speaker at midnight, because I'm sorry, the time change is killing me. So you start talking 4 o'clock again. Why don't I have my pajamas on now? But the energy in the room is starting to flag a little bit. How are people feeling? What's the body language? Right. So you apply that same real acronym when you start your meetings. The first thing is that recognize, what do you see? What are you sensing? What are you feeling? Who's unusually quiet that's not normally quiet? Who has those signs of overwhelm? You know what those physical indicators are. Somebody's breezing into the meeting and they're late, they have stuff and they're all over the place. Or the nervous energy, just can't. Why are we still in this? What are the physical signs that are telling you what's going on in the room? Or just that universal feeling. Sometimes you come in, and it feels heavy. Everybody's stressed. Or it's like a room full of squirrels. Nobody is ready, nobody's on task, like, but acknowledge how that feels at the beginning of the meeting. And then engage with it. Be present, acknowledge it as you're actually talking. You don't have to have the perfect words to talk about what it is, but just call it out if you see those things happening. It helps everybody in the room to be engaged and also to kind of recognize, okay, we're all in this together and now we're about to have a meeting. This especially works with staff internal meeting. I run board meetings. We're probably not going to call out the board for their feeling at the beginning of the meeting, but and then ask a question. Now, when you're talking about, there's a difference between one-on-one meetings and group meetings. But it's the ask that really helps you set the tone for that empathy. So in a group setting, you might start out with a segue question, we call them. We start with get to know you questions of all kinds. Sometimes they're fun and lighthearted. Sometimes they really are more serious because the tone and the feel is really calling for that. So maybe your question is, on a scale of I'm good, I'm managing, I'm running on hopes and caffeine, or I am a human dumpster fire, how are you today, right? It brings some humor, brings some fun, but it also allows people to acknowledge at whatever degree of vulnerability they want to have, how they're really feeling. I've come into a leadership team meeting before and just ask, what is the thing that's keeping you up at night right now? Is there something about work that's really bothering you? And I was shocked actually, because we have a really open workplace. Empathy and psychological safety are really strong with our group. We're a small organization anyway. But the level of vulnerability and sharing that actually happened that day, it was surprising even to me, because people were really feeling. I've had a couple of guys in our workplace who have acknowledged separately that, I've never worked somewhere where I actually felt like I could acknowledge that I had stresses outside of work, especially for men. I mean, women, we talk about lots of things, but not all cultures are created that way where they feel they can be honest about, man, I'm trying to keep up with work, but I just got married. I'm a new dad. I've had some personal health diagnosis that now I'm trying to be strong about, but it's freaking me out. So how do you create a culture where we can talk about that? So say within a one-on-one, going back to that posture of curiosity, really connecting with how are you feeling? What's going on? Noticing when things aren't quite the same. I recently had a conversation with a member of my team where we had an impromptu one-on-one, and the basis of the conversation was, hey, you and I had an interaction yesterday and it didn't feel like your usual reaction. And I know I didn't react to it the way I normally would either. And so something's going on and we need to talk about that. And we were able to talk about what we independently had going on that was coming to the table at an interaction that shouldn't have had any of that extra friction with it. So taking the time to look at that apply that reel before a meeting can make a huge difference. But the last one that I'm most excited to talk about as we talk about the competitive advantage of empathy in the workplace is about delegation. Delegation is one of the biggest emotional triggers at work. For some people, it creates opportunity. For other people, it creates a sense of overwhelm. And empathy says, I see how you work, and let's build around how you work. So the reality check for delegation, again, I mentioned I've had more conversations about just what impacts how people work than I ever had previously. And I want to share a couple of real examples with you that I've had with my own team. So I have employee A. And employee A is fast moving. Is fast moving would be a kind way to say there's probably some undiagnosed ADHD at work here. We can see the signs of this in how we work. But fast moving has a role that has a seemingly never ending list of tasks, short-term and long-term projects, supporting many people in the organization, a lot of open-end assignments, competing priorities, and that can create a sense of overwhelm. But also what we were observing is that details will get lost, steps get missed, instructions get lost in translation. But this is from an employee that only wants to do the best work, only wants to please, only wants to just be what's needed. But that requires a conversation and an application of a reality check of, okay, so how do I apply that when I deal with this employee? And the recognized portion is having that conversation that says, you know, I see the overwhelm. And engaging about how do we break this down, and asking the questions, what's making work challenging? How can we create a structure that allows you to do what you need to do and allows me to communicate with you in a way that I trust that the details are going to be handled and that all of the steps are going to be done without micromanaging your work, because neither of us want that. And what do we do? And then listening to the answers. What does that really mean? In the case of this employee, it meant that we went to our best friend ChatGPT and we said, hey, we need a better system for tracking tools and staff. So we use Microsoft Teams. How can we build a better structure? And specifically telling Chat, I have an employee who I think has some adult ADHD, and we need to work on these things. And this is what I need, and this is what they said, and what do we need? And I love Chat. Chat came up with a wonderful system for us that included designations of buckets and tags and titles for buckets and a system and 4 or 5 steps for how do we slow down to practice the pause to make sure we've gotten all the details. And it's something that we built together to work through this process. This employee has said to me and has said to our entire team in a full staff meeting that this issue is one that they have been feeling like they've had to hide in the workplace for years and didn't know how to deal with it and didn't want anybody to see how much they should. Practicing that real and acknowledging that situation that it exists and what do we both want and what do we both need allowed us to create a structure that now enables us both to do our best work and allows that employee to feel the empathy of, we want you to be able to do your best. And we want this to be an environment that you feel safe in. Now, employee B is a completely different scenario. Employee B, highly organized, highly structured, very high performing, execute always with quality, way more than you ever expected, always. But that need for protection, for perfection and expectation meeting also means that she can tend to overbuild things, overproduce, spend more time than was really needed or necessary. And it's usually awesome and you love it, but the propensity for an employee like that to burn out or to just constantly feel like they're trying to second guess what you want because they don't want to not meet your expectations. I am that employee's nightmare because I am all about, hey, I don't want to stifle your creativity. And you're going to bring things to the table that I wouldn't even think to ask for. And they're like, no, please just give me a deadline. Tell me exactly what you want, how you want it, when you want it, and I will do that thing. So we have to find a way to meet in the middle. This is what I need from you, and this is how you work, and how do we do that? So we got to recognize for that employee that that perfection is pressure, and that engaging with them is like, let's define what's good enough here. What do I really expect versus what might you want to do, and how do we meet in the middle? And ask the questions about clarity. What would make you feel more confident? about this project? What questions you have about what I expect? And then again, listening and hearing those indications that as much as I want to give her freedom to do all these amazing things, she actually wants some constraints and some structure to be saved from herself. Because if I let her, she's gonna just keep doing amazing work all day, every day, until all of a sudden she just can't. So empathy is actually about accountability. It's about creating structures and communicating expectations in a way that everybody feels like they can show up as their best self, while also acknowledging that there are times when your 100% is 110%, and there are times when your 100% is maybe 70%, and but that 70% is everything you have to get that day. Dolores didn't share that story in particular, but it's one she shared with us in a group that somebody said, "You're not always going to get 100% from me." And the ability to actually be vulnerable and share that, like, yeah, that's true. So what I want to leave you with is empathy. It's not hard. It really is simple. It's just slowing down and seeing people. It's having real conversations. It's acknowledging what's going on in their life. It's perceiving. But when you do that, it's your greatest leadership advantage. It's not perfection. It's being present. You as the leader and allowing your staff to be present. And that from the moment you walk into it to the time that you end the day, just allowing people to be themselves and just acknowledge that, hey, we are one crazy kaleidoscope of people, and our best resources are people. So how do we just enable everybody to do their best work to allow our organizations to compete, be those amazing companies and provide wonderful services to our community? And that creates workplaces that people want to work, and managers that people want to work for. And the more you can keep them, keep that retention, keep that turnover low, that's better for everybody's bottom line. So you do have a tool that's got those examples for a reality check for you, for meetings, and for delegation to take back to your office in case you need those as reminders. And thank you guys so much for allowing us to present to you today.
Let's open it up for questions. Yes, please. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Let's get it going.
First of all, Michelle, I resent you using me as the example for the ADHD worker. What would you guys say to somebody, maybe one of your team members, who says, "I'm just not an empathetic person"?
Well, for me, what's that saying? Everything you need to know about life you learned in kindergarten.
Mhm.
Treat other people the way you want to be treated. And so if you are not an empathetic person, don't expect it from everybody else. So yeah.
I was gonna say, we came up with the 10 behaviors or the 10 essentials that are ways in which we can treat each other, which in itself is empathy, kindness. And so giving them or even highlighting more areas where that person actually was empathetic but didn't realize that's what they were doing.
I'd say for us, if I needed to directly respond to that statement, it's really kind of reframing about what do you think it means to be empathetic? Because for me, it just means, do you acknowledge other people's lived experience? People are different, and just acknowledging that is empathy, right? But a more subtle way to kind of battle that is just creating opportunities for colleagues to show empathy for each other. And some of that is as simple as a segue question at the beginning of a meeting, where you are sharing something about yourself as individuals. What was the first piece of technology you ever had to use in the workplace? Well, my answer is really different from Aaron's answer, is different from Lacey's answer, because generationally we are different. We worked for different kinds of businesses in our life. Now, all of a sudden, we know some things about our past and where do we have shared experience.
One thing I will say too, just to go back to, is that this is another opportunity for curiosity, which is exactly what she said. It's like, I'm so curious. How did you come up with this idea that you are not empathetic?
Get it quick.
How do you manage a team that is becoming volatile due to empathy? So what I mean by that is, if you're a member of the management team and some of your staff come in from LA.
Mhm.
And the rest of the staff starts not really liking it and can't really freely talk about it. So how do you maneuver through that situation?
I think for me, part of that approach would be leaning into accountability and responsibility, first of all. Something that our team does and just consistently is we're quarterly sharing what's happening, our individual accountabilities and how those are relating to the organization as a whole. And because we are regularly sharing those with the group, everybody has an understanding who's responsible for what's happening with workload. I say that because sometimes you may have an individual who is dealing with a health issue or FMLA, and they're still performing, they're still doing their part, but maybe they're not as present or visible. That may not be this scenario, it might be just that they're out. But that's one way to help kind of draw attention to everybody's doing their part, and it might still be a little different, maybe see what's happening. As far as somebody who is out and there's resentment or feeling like somebody's having to carry an extra load, I think rather than focusing on the situation of the individual who needs to be out, the focus needs to be on that curiosity and recognition of how are the rest of the staff being impacted, and how can you bring to the table something that feels like relief, that feels like restructure, that helps them feel like their feelings of overwhelm or overload are being dealt with. So you're not really dealing with the person that's fine, you're dealing with people who are still there.
Sure,
That might be
makes
a
sense.
approach, you could say.
We actually had that, I had that conversation last week. Exact conversation, actually. And we just to your point, we listened. Where are the pain points? What's happening? What can we do to shift some responsibilities and send in some help? But it was more about just listening to the frustration, but then saying, what can we control? Like, what can you do in this? And what we can control always is our mindset, right? And our approach to things. But it was really more about, thank you, I at least feel heard. And I know, and it's usually, if you're feeling it, somebody else is feeling it too. But in that case, it really wasn't legitimate. Like, the team went from 6 down to 2, right? They're doing the workload of, and so it was really about, we see you, we hear you, and this is what we're going to do to try to help that. And so I think that was more of, she was a thank you for at least for taking me serious. It's more fun.
The one thing I would add to what these two have already added is sometimes expectations aren't clear as they need to be. And so we worked with a lot of volunteers. So we were going through a situation where there were certain students that, because they're volunteers or students, they didn't think that their shift was important as everybody else. So they would say, oh, if I don't go, it's okay, somebody else is going to cover it. But the reality is that we count on our volunteers to be just like a staff member, treated like a job and a shift. And if you can't be there, there's a communication process that needs to be followed. So the other thing I think can be helpful is making sure that all the expectations are set correctly up front. And that is part of helping everybody to be on the same page. One of the things that Brene Brown says too is to be clear is to be kind. And so just making the expectations very clear up front, I think is another way of expressing empathy so that everybody's on the same page and then deal with it from within there.
There's a good question on Zoom. How do you make sure that when someone shows vulnerabilities, that's a hard word to read out loud, they are not exploited? Also, when are things oversharing? What key things need to be in place for this culture of empathy to thrive? So how can people open themselves up in a negative way by bringing up too much? How do you keep the rails there so it's not?
For me, the first half of that question about want to make sure I speak to the right part of the first half.
Yeah. Oh, let me reread it.
Okay.
Hopefully correctly this time. How do you make sure that when someone shows vulnerabilities, they are not exploited?
That half of the question, for me, the most important part is that when you are creating those opportunities for people to be vulnerable, especially in a group setting, which is where you're more likely to have some of that scenario, is that you are creating those opportunities consistently and regularly. Because people are going to be vulnerable and share at different phases and stages. And if you open up an opportunity where somebody is vulnerable and then there's never an opportunity for someone else to be vulnerable because you're not continuing with that, then you create more of a culture of, wow, I know a lot about this person and not others. And it does create the ability for that. As far as the other side of the oversharing, I think you always have that potential, and it's being able to, in the moment, kind of redirect as tactfully as possible, kind of change the subject a little bit, interject, but then you have to follow that up with an individual conversation with that person, because that oversharing is probably an indication that they really have a lot of things going on. And so that might actually be the place where you're talking about EAP programs and other things that are available to help support somebody and find out what it is they need and make sure that they still feel supported, even when you're maybe having to save the whole group from all the details.
So Michelle's framework is called Get Real, and I think I'm going to create one that's called Mama Bear. I view part of my training working in nonprofits is that my number one job as executive director is to protect the organization. If you don't protect your mission and your organization, then you can't help anybody. So that's kind of the number one thing. And then like 1A of that is protecting the people. And we do have lots of students and young people that we're responsible for. And so I do think that there is I think you said the people are the culture. What's that other saying about culture eats strategy for lunch? So you have to create a culture where that's trusting and that's not toxic. So as you see those toxic kind of things happening, that there's a way to root those out. So I think that that's part of the leader's job, is to make sure that those toxic elements are rooted out and that there is an element of protection. There was a situation my daughter ran into where she was mistreated in a work environment, and the person said to me, this was kind of a charitable organization, and they said to me, but with those people that we're working with, we have to create this environment for them. And I said, but you also have to create an environment where my daughter is safe. And so I think all of that it still falls into that whole idea of building a really healthy culture, and I think that's a big part of it. And in terms of the oversharing, I think some of that is generational, can be. My parents' generation, there's still stuff we're not talking about. I'm like, okay, it's been 50 years, people. I think we can talk about it openly now. But then you have younger generations where, everything it might even be on social media, right? So I do think that there is a balance of helping people to understand appropriate behavior in the workplace. Again, working with lots of students, we have a lot of opportunity to treat help people understand professionalism, but still creating those safe spaces where they need to share, they can do that. But it's not always out in front of everybody, sometimes it's that one-on-one versus that whole, hey, let me tell you what happened last night. That's not.
I think the key thing you said in there was when you create a culture of empathy and trust, like trust is the foundation of just about everything we do. So yeah, when you trust enough that you're willing to share vulnerabilities, that's a culture that, and then define what oversharing is. It's kind of to your point. Nowadays, we know a lot about people that we never think we should know, and then some, it's the generation, I think you need that really straight on. But again, trust, trusting enough that somebody will give you their vulnerability, and then if it's being exploited, there's something wrong with the culture too.
We have time for one more short question. If anyone has a quick one. Anybody? Mike? All right. Thank you so much for our panel. I'm not gonna put the board in the room.
Not with the
Dolores, Avonte, Michelle, thank you all so much. We have our bowl going around right now for our couple of giveaways. So if you have a business card, get it out. Let's get it in that bowl. One last thank you. One last thank you to Charlie and Jessica and STCU. Thank you so much for helping this program.
Awesome.
I would.
Our last meeting visit.
I'm glad we're here.
Drawings, Michelle.
Awesome.
Michelle has graciously donated
Thank you.
to 1 hour coffee and connected meetups. So you don't get both. You get one of the two. No, it's not edge to the well. Okay.
Flyer.
He's busy with his other stuff. Yeah.
Surveys.
Ooh, surveys. Yes, sir. Actually, I heard that too.
Look at that.
It is right. You have to say, you can do it that way as well. Okay. Our first winner, Aaron Burton. Yeah. And our second winner, Naomi Perez. Awesome. Thank you so much. I will get these cards to you. Thank you all so much. This has been the best year ever at Ask the Experts. And next year, we hope to make it even better. We'll see. Stay tuned. Thank you all so much. Have a great holiday season. Thank you.